Perhaps the most common question I get when it comes to estate planning is, why do I need an estate plan? Well, that's a great question, and my answer is that you need to have a plan for your estate, or the government has one for you. In this video, you'll see the important reason why everyone needs an estate plan. You'll find out what happens if you don't have a plan for your estate. I'll show you the key components included in a properly drafted estate plan. You'll understand the impact on your family if you pass away without leaving any sort of plan for what's to come of your estate. You'll see the impact that a properly drafted estate plan can have on the legacy that you leave behind for your family and for your assets. Okay. When it comes to estate planning and answering the question of why do I need an estate plan? Well, we've got to start with first things first. I tell you, I share this information with people all the time, and I always start from the same way. I remember hearing a story about Vince Lombardi, as the famous coach who the Super Bowl trophy is named after. He would start every season. I don't care how long you had played for him. He would always start with, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And he would start with things right from the very beginning with that level of simplicity, and that's how I'm going to start this video. Everyone has an estate. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, yeah, but mine's not that big, so I don't need this complex estate plan. Well, it doesn't have to be overly complex, but what you do need to realize and to really acknowledge is that you have an estate. I don't know how big that estate is, and you know what? It doesn't matter. Because the reality is you have an estate, and as a result of that, you need a plan for your estate. If you don't have a plan, someone will have a plan for you. That someone is the government. That's right. I'm not talking about the government will come in and confiscate your assets. It doesn't happen like that, no matter how badly someone may try to scare you. But this should scare you badly enough to know that the government has what they call their laws of intestate succession. And those are basically laws of how your assets will be distributed in the event that you were to pass away intestate. Intestate simply means without a plan. You see, you've got to have a plan in place. Why? Because otherwise, you'll be subject to the government's plan for your estate through intestate succession. You want to have your plan, not the government's. Now, one of the core considerations you've got to think about is, who would you like to benefit from your lifetime of accumulated efforts? Would you like for those efforts to benefit your family, or would you rather have those benefit the government? Well, if you're like most people, and if you're like me at all, you definitely want to take care of your family rather than taking care of the government. Now, that may sound strange because, the government is not going to get all of your assets. However, the government is going to tell you how those assets are going to be distributed through those laws of intestate succession. So you want to make sure that you have a plan for how your assets will be distributed upon your death. Remember, they're your assets. It needs to be distributed to your family if that's what you want. You may not want to leave it to your family. You may want to leave it to your church. You may want to leave it to a charity. You may want to leave it to your favorite cause. Maybe you want to leave it to some deserving person that really needs the assets more than you think your family needs those assets. Hey, again, it's your estate. It needs to follow your plan for how it's going to be taken care of whenever you pass away. Now, something you need to think about as well is that when we're talking about your estate, it's not just money. It's far more than just money. This is basically how you are going to be remembered when you're left behind. When I say how you're going to be remembered, are there certain things that you would want to make sure are taken care of for your family? An estate plan is one of those most essential items that needs to be taken care of. Now, for those that you are leaving behind, for your family members, they're going to have certain memories of you, but what if they have memories that, hey, you know what? Dad always took care of things while he was alive. It's only fitting that he took care of things once he passed away. Mom was so loving. She always looked out for us. Of course, she would have a plan in place to look out for us even after she's passed away. This is one of the best things that you can do for your family, to know that they're not going to be left in chaos, confusion, complication at a time when they're trying to grieve the loss of perhaps the most important person in their entire life. Make sure that you have that plan. When we say, why do you need this? Because it's partly about that. It's partly about taking care of them so that they're not left in a chaotic, confusing time. No, they're left with a plan. All they have to do is follow that plan. So why do I need to get an estate plan? Is to make sure that those things are taken care of. Now, the other thing is, this can be very confusing. There are a lot of different components that make up an overall estate plan. There are a lot of things that need to be factored in, a lot of considerations. Those are the types of things that we cover, not only in this video, but in all our videos. So if you've not done so yet, be sure to hit the like or subscribe button to this YouTube channel so that you can continually gain access to more and more information all the time. And even better, you'll be notified whenever we come out with a new video, so you'll be the first to be able to access this valuable and important information. Okay, when I say that there's more to think about than just money, a lot of times people think, okay, what's the most important part of my estate plan? How much money am I leaving? Who am I leaving it to? Well, I think you could probably make the argument that anybody that says that's the most important part of your estate plan, you may not want them to be part of your estate plan. If all they care about is when are you going to pass away so that they can access your money, well, that just underscores the vast need for an estate plan. Because here's what an estate plan can do for you. It's not just listing out, okay, this is the person or persons that will be receiving my money. No. Through a properly drafted estate plan, you can implement trust as part of that plan, and a trust can put controls, can put restrictions. It can put things that must be accomplished, things that must be taken care of before anybody gets these assets. Now, it can be as simple as saying I want a distribution schedule in place that says, maybe they get a third at age 21, a third at age 25, a third at age 30, and I'm just giving you those ages just as a for instance. A lot of times people will say, yeah, but my kids are already 25. Well, okay, well then maybe we adjust those numbers. And the great thing about this is that your plan needs to be flexible. That flexibility allows you, let's say once they're 50. I share this story sometimes. I had a client one time that said, okay, yeah, I like the idea of that distribution schedule. Fact is, we're going to put it in place and my kids will get a third when they're 45, a third when they're 55, and a third when they're 65. And I said, okay, that seems a little late. And they said, yeah, well, by that time, hopefully they've demonstrated some financial responsibility. Hopefully you're not in that same predicament where you're worried about your family being spendthrifts like this. But speaking of a spendthrift, you can even have spendthrift provisions as part of your trust agreement, so that the trustee, whoever you name, which is going to be an important part of that overall estate plan, that trustee can determine, hey, it's not in our best interest of this trust to distribute any funds outright to this particular beneficiary. If you've laid it out that way, the trustee has that type of control. So it's something you want to factor in too. How's everything going to transpire? Well, part of it is who are going to be your decision makers. Decision makers are part of a very important decision that you've got to make, your decision for your decision makers. So you've got powers of attorney for general and financial affairs, you've got powers of attorney for medical affairs, and then you've got successor trustees. Do you want this to be a family member? Would you rather it be maybe a disinterested third party? Well, you've got that choice. Sometimes people say, I'd rather hire a law firm, or I'd rather hire an attorney to do that. That's something that you can do. Now, obviously, you want to speak with them in advance to make sure that that's going to be an option. And what I always do when I'm working with clients is I have them to identify at least 3 different people so that we have the primary person, then we've got a backup. But then I like to have a backup to the backup. Now, maybe you think that's overkill, but hey, I'm just kind of a person that says, I hope for the best, but I've got a plan for the worst. So that's what you've got to think about when it comes to your overall estate plan. Okay, since we're talking about why do you need an estate plan and the fact that kind of the theme is it's more than just money, I want to talk to you about something right now that I think is very important to me. It's very important to my clients. And I think it's really something that is a bit unique because a lot of estate planning professionals, they just don't really acknowledge this or they don't take it to this level. And what I mean by this is that sometimes they're just focused on the money and say, okay, are we going to facilitate the transfer of that money? How's this going to happen? But I believe that money is not your most precious asset. You're your most precious asset. Your accumulation of wisdom throughout your life is something that can be passed on. Imagine, think about if your parents had left behind the wisdom that they had accumulated throughout their lives and say, you know what, here are the things that I did that worked. You need to know about this. And even better, sometimes, here are the things that I did that didn't work. You're going to be tempted to do this, but let me tell you how to avoid this temptation. Or let me tell you what happens if you give in to this temptation. You know, part of it is you need to have a plan in place that leaves behind a legacy. Through a trust, you can put restrictions in place that says they don't get access to the money unless they abide by the terms of that trust agreement or unless they follow essentially your family constitution, if you will. So you could draft up a family constitution that's made up of certain financial philosophies, certain financial principles, certain rules of wealth, if you will, that essentially says, hey, this money is being left for you, but it must be used for these purposes. And then you've got a trustee. Now that trustee could be even subject to a board of advisors or a board of directors for your overall estate that can then say, okay, we're going to be put in place, and you can even provide for their compensation as part of your trust, and would be paid for out of the trust principle. And then they can help guide your children. They can help guide your grandchildren. You know, if you look at two of the wealthiest families that have ever lived, the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, at their time, each of them was the wealthiest family in the entire world. Well, today, if you were to look at the Forbes 500, there's still quite a few Rockefellers on there. There's not a single Vanderbilt. How could this be the case? It's two similarly situated families, two of the wealthiest in the entire world that have ever lived. Why is one retained their wealth and why is one not? Well, it's how the estate plan was put in place. You know, that's where this is so important. Why do you need an estate plan? Because you want your wealth to last for generations, multiple generations. Well, you can do that, but you've got to have a plan for how it works. That's exactly the type of information that I included in the mini course that I created called Enlightened Estate Planning. It is a special course, but it's very special for you because it's available to you absolutely free of charge. That's my gift to you for sticking around on this video, for doing what it takes to demonstrate that you're concerned about your estate planning. Well, I want to reward you for that, so free of charge, you get access to my Enlightened Estate Planning mini course. All you have to do is click the link below and provide us with the information so we can get that information to you. So Enlightened Estate Planning, the mini course will enlighten you on the overall process of estate planning and how you can make your wealth last for multiple generations. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of this YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video. I'm JJ Childers. Thanks for watching.